A few decades ago, if you wanted to watch a movie, you rented it from Blockbuster. You wanted music, you bought a CD, software. You purchased it once and used it forever. But something has fundamentally shifted. Today, we don't buy things anymore, we rent access to them. Netflix, Spotify, Adobe Creative Cloud, grocery delivery, cloud storage, fitness classes, meal planning apps. They're each only $5 here, $10 there, maybe $15 if we're not paying attention. The math seems reasonable in isolation, but when you add them all up, when most people are juggling 10 to 20 active subscriptions at once, something strange happens. You find yourself hemorrhaging money to dozens of different companies, money that disappears every single month without you actually owning anything. And most people don't even realize it's happening until they sit down and count them all. So, how did we end up in a world where owning things became so expensive that renting became the default? What makes the subscription model so profitable for companies and so difficult for consumers to escape? And finally, what's actually happening to the economy when everything becomes a service you pay for permanently instead of a product you own? The subscription economy is worth roughly $650 billion globally, growing at about 15% per year, nearly 3 times faster than traditional retail. The average household in developed countries now spends between $150 and $350 per month on subscriptions, and it's climbing. Some research suggests it could hit $500 per month within 5 years. For context, that's approaching rent in lower cost areas. The thing is, this happened almost by accident. When companies first started experimenting with subscription models, it wasn't really a grand conspiracy to extract money from consumers. Netflix invented the streaming subscription because renting physical DVDs was expensive and cumbersome. Spotify started subscriptions to fight music piracy. Adobe went subscription-based, partly to fund continuous development, partly because it made pricing more predictable. These are all reasonable business justifications that made sense at the time. But then something else happened. Companies realized that subscriptions don't just generate revenue, they generate predictable, recurring revenue. They generate something Wall Street absolutely loves, which is stability. Subscription businesses can project future income with certainty. They know how many subscribers they'll have. They can estimate churn rates. They can plan expenses around guaranteed cash flow. This is incredibly valuable to investors because it eliminates uncertainty. A traditional software company might make a huge sale one month and nothing the next. A subscription company makes $50 million every single month without fail. And because investors love predictability, subscription companies get valued much higher than traditional businesses. Netflix might trade at 15 times revenue or more, while a traditional retailer trades at half that. So companies started asking themselves, why should we sell products when we could charge recurring fees? Why sell you a copy of Microsoft Office once when we could charge you $70 a year forever? Why let you own your digital music when we could charge you $10 a month for access to all music, knowing that you'll probably keep paying because switching costs are high and the inconvenience of stopping is greater than the pain of paying? Once this realization took hold, it spread like wildfire. Every industry started converting to subscriptions. Car companies, furniture companies, even parking spaces and gym memberships got rebranded as premium tiers. The logic was perfect from a business perspective. Recurring revenue is more valuable, more predictable, allows for price increases that feel small, but add up massively, and critically, it locks customers in through switching costs and habit. There are genuine upsides to subscriptions for consumers. They eliminated the friction of ownership. You don't need massive DVD collections taking space. You don't decide if a movie is worth buying. You just pay monthly and get access to thousands of options. For software, subscriptions mean you always have the latest version, security patches, new features. That's better than buying licenses and using them for 5 years until obsolete. And for services like cloud storage or email, subscriptions just make sense. There's actual infrastructure costs to maintain. Someone has to pay for the servers and the bandwidth and the customer support. But here's where the model gets sinister. Once companies realized how profitable subscriptions were, they started using dark patterns to make them easier to start and harder to cancel. Most subscription-free trials don't require you to enter a credit card up front, which is convenient. But it also means you're more likely to forget to cancel before the trial ends and your card gets charged. Some companies make cancellation deliberately difficult, hiding the cancel button behind multiple menus or requiring you to call a phone number rather than clicking a button. Some use inertia as a weapon, assuming that most people won't bother to manage their subscriptions carefully, so why not just let them keep paying? And it works. Studies consistently show that people keep subscriptions for months or even years after they stop using them, simply because remembering to cancel is harder than just letting the charge go through. The behavioral economics here are well understood and deliberately weaponized. Once someone sets up automatic payments, they're in a state of inattention. They don't actively decide to keep paying each month. They just don't actively decide to stop. And that inattention is worth billions to subscription companies. So what does this mean for individuals and families? For someone managing 10 to 15 subscriptions, the math starts looking very different than it did for each individual service. You might think you're spending $40 on entertainment subscriptions, $30 on software, $20 on fitness, $20 on food delivery. That's only $110, which seems fine. But then you add in the stuff you forget about. The free trial that converted to paid, the app you downloaded once and haven't used in 6 months. The family plan you split with friends, but then suddenly nobody's paying except you. The video streaming service you only watch 3 shows on per year. Very quickly, you're at $200 a month. And here's the insidious part. Each individual subscription is small enough that you don't feel like you have strong justification to cancel it. Cancelling Netflix to save $10 feels petty. But cancelling all of them simultaneously saves you $2,400 per year. And once you account for opportunity costs, for what that money could have been invested in or saved for, the real cost becomes staggering. For younger people trying to save for a house down payment, every $2,400 matters. For families living paycheck to paycheck, subscription creep is literally money that could go to groceries or utilities or emergency savings. This is why subscription services have become so prevalent among lower and middle income households, not just wealthy ones. The average household income in the United States is around $75,000 per year. The average household subscription spending is now around $200 per month or $2,400 per year. That's roughly 2% of gross income going to subscriptions, and that's before taxes. For lower income households, the percentage is often much higher, sometimes reaching 5 to 7% of income. And critically, this is money that's generating zero equity. You own nothing at the end. You're paying for the privilege of temporary access, and the moment you stop paying, access stops. Compare this to buying a book, or a piece of software, or a piece of furniture. You own it. You can sell it later, you can give it away, you can use it without ongoing payments. But subscriptions are designed to be permanent, optional, but permanent. The subscription model also raises uncomfortable questions about what happens to these services when companies fail or decide to shut things down. When Netflix or Spotify eventually go bankrupt or get acquired and shut down, hundreds of millions of people lose access to all their content simultaneously. There's no backup. There's no ownership to fall back on. You've paid for years of access, and suddenly that access is gone. This actually happened with various music and video services over the past decade. Zediver, a video rental service, shut down. Google Play Music shut down and forced everyone to switch to YouTube Music. Scribd did a pivot. Each time, millions of people lost access to content they'd paid for. With owned media, that's not a problem. Your books stay yours, your DVDs stay yours, your music files stay yours. But with subscriptions, your access is contingent on the company's continued existence and profitability. This is the fundamental mismatch between the subscription model and human values around ownership and permanence. But from a company perspective, the subscription model is nearly perfect. It's not just about revenue, it's about power. Subscriptions give companies intimate knowledge of consumer behavior. They know exactly what you watch, what music you listen to, what software features you use, when you use them, which services you actually value, and which you've abandoned. That data is incredibly valuable. It's more valuable than the subscription fee itself in many cases. The data gets sold to advertisers, used to personalize content, used to inform product development, used to predict which customers are likely to churn and implement retention strategies. This is also why so many free services have transitioned to paid subscriptions. They ran out of inventory to sell to advertisers, so they pivoted to asking users directly for money, but they kept the data collection. You're now paying money for the same service that was monetizing your data before. You're just more transparent about it, which somehow makes it feel less predatory, even though the economic extraction is identical or greater. So what happens to an economy that's increasingly structured around subscriptions instead of ownership? Some economists argue this is actually more efficient. You pay for what you use, you don't accumulate stuff you don't need, supply chains could theoretically be more optimized. But there's a darker implication. When everything becomes a service, ownership becomes a luxury good. Only wealthy people own homes, own cars outright, own software licenses, own media. Everyone else rents. And renting is always more expensive than buying in the long term. You're not building equity. You're not accumulating assets. You're trapped in a permanent state of consumption without accumulation. This is the subscription economy trap. It's not that any single subscription is predatory, though some use predatory tactics. It's that the entire system is designed to extract money perpetually from consumers while ensuring that they never own anything. Companies maximize lifetime value extraction. They know you'll never own Netflix. You'll never own Spotify. You'll never own Adobe Creative Cloud, so they can keep raising prices, knowing that your switching costs are high, knowing that you're unlikely to disconnect all at once, knowing that they've won your attention and your data for as long as you live. The question becomes, is this sustainable? Is this good for society? And what could actually change it? Some regulation is starting to emerge. The UK and EU have started requiring companies to make subscription cancellation as easy as sign up, and it's already changing behaviour. Churn rates have increased. Companies have had to think more carefully about retention through value rather than dark patterns. Some companies are starting to offer hybrid models. Own or subscribe. Use now and own forever. Or rent monthly. This gives consumers actual choice. Some economists argue for right-to-repair laws and digital ownership rights, where people who buy software or digital goods actually own them in a meaningful way. But the subscription model is so profitable, and investors are so invested in recurring revenue streams, that the incentives to maintain the status quo are enormous. Every quarter, Wall Street rewards subscription companies for growing their subscriber base and average revenue per user. Those incentives aren't going to change without significant regulatory pressure or massive shifts in consumer behavior. And consumer behavior is exactly where the subscription model exploits human psychology most effectively. We're not good at managing small recurring charges. We're not good at remembering to cancel things. We prefer convenience over cost. We'd rather have access to everything than own a few things. These are real human traits, and the subscription economy has essentially weaponized them for profit extraction. If you want to understand more about how companies use behavioral economics and dark patterns to manipulate consumer behavior, we've actually made several videos on that exact topic.